Hey, what's up everybody? It's Gabriel here with Wild Whetstones, and today I'm going to show you how I refresh a straight razor edge. This razor's starting to tug, and it's probably been a long time since I honed it because I've been growing a beard. But I miss sharpening razors, so I'm just going to do a little tutorial for you guys. So if you have a razor and it's already got somewhat of a bevel established, you can see it's got a little bit of an edge. Maybe it even shaves a little bit. Oh, it's sharper than I remember. So yeah, you can see it's taken arm hair. But let's say you've shaved and you've maybe used it 5 or 10 times. You'll find that stropping an edge only does so much to bring it back. The reason why stropping works is because there's silica in skin or leather. So you do get a tiny micro amount of abrasion when you do that. But when your strop and your compounds are no longer enough, here's how you refresh a razor. I'm gonna do a light slurry with a diamond plate. This is a worn out 325, but you could also buy one of those small little cards that DMT makes. You want to buy continuously plated diamond plates. The ones with the dots pattern, they tend to wear out faster. They also tend to scratch the stone up more than you want. And if you have a diamond plate like this, you can actually sharpen on this as well if you're really needing to restore a rough edge. So just give the stone a little splash of water, and I bear down when I do this. If your diamond plate's fresher, you don't want to push as hard because it's just not necessary. So within a short order, you start to work up some mud. And you really don't need to make this a very thick consistency at all. As soon as a piece of jasper is lapped, the pores of the stone get opened slightly from your last sharpening session. This makes the stone cut very, very fast, but the slurry is very, very fine. So even with an edge that is dull, you should be able to get back to shaving sharp really quickly. So to perfectly align this edge and take out any micro pits, I'm just gonna take it through the corner of the stone real lightly. And then probe. And that did take away the bite. There's still a little bit of bite down in the heel. Another way you can do this is just right on the top of the stone. And you just wanna go real light. You don't need to use pressure when you do this. And what that does is it kills the edge. So when you bring it back, it's going to be very even. So making sure not to get any hair in the slurry. Maybe add another little drop of water. I let the weight of the razor glide along the stone, and I'm feeling which parts of my edge are in contact. And when the razor starts to pick up slurry onto the blade, those are the parts where you're getting the most edge contact. So you can observe your water line, and you can see, is one side in contact a little better, or is the other side in contact a little better? A huge advantage of using a really hard, fine stone with a slurry is that you're going to keep really clean edge geometry, and you're only going to remove just a little bit of steel. I don't need to drop this razor way back down to bevel setting grit. Even from dulling my edge slightly, there's still a pretty good bevel established behind it. So I'm just cleaning up the edge of the edge to make this razor outstandingly smooth and sharp. This circular technique allows you to slightly tip and adjust. This razor does not have a totally straight spine, so I'm doing a little bit of a lift, just ever so slightly, and that's helping me reach the parts of the edge that aren't quite in contact yet. I found that this blade was a little easier to sharpen at the heel than up here at the toe, so I also like to do some of these rolling X strokes. Just slowly planing in my edge. The slurry that gets released from this stone is really fine and pure gemstone abrasive, and this tends to take an edge to mirror polished. So I'd ballpark the finish on this stone at 20 to 30,000 grit. Yet it's also very fast cutting. It cuts maybe more like what some people are used to a 1,000 grit stone cutting like. I find it's a really amazing combination, and it pretty much eliminates me needing to use any other sharpening stones. If you want your jasper to cut coarse, sand it with something just a little rougher than this worn out diamond plate. That plate probably gives a surface action of maybe 600 grit, maybe slightly finer than that. But the stone quickly gets back to smooth as steel gets drawn across it. So after a little bit of time, wash away your slurry once it starts to get runny. And now, the stone's surface is doing the primary cutting action. It was doing a lot of the cutting action before, but when you wash away the loose slurry particles, you really start to feel more suction. That's the blade sticking to the stone. And I see a faint amount of metal floating in the slurry. Every sharpening stroke, this stone takes away a line of metal. So I'm feeling my whole edge. I can tell that it's all in contact because I get a nice kind of velvety, glidey feeling. The feedback of this stone is incredible. You can really feel it start to grab your edge, and that's when you know it's about finished. So again, just give it a little wash. And another trick too is you can keep the water running. I try to get it so it's not splashing everywhere. Maybe just like a really thin little stream. And that keeps the particles that you might free from the surface rolling away and washing off the stone. This is how you get a surgical sharp finish that's really smooth. And this will impress you when you shave with a stone that you finish like this with. For my finishing strokes, I go really slow and end with just a little bit of that roll motion. You should hear the stone, and it should be really quiet when you're nearly finished. When you lap one of these with a coarse grit, it makes more noise. You hear it really removing steel. And as the stone smooths in, the polish it can do gets finer and finer. You will be able to see a reflection in the bevel, and that kind of a polish happens at about a 0.5 micron. So that's how I get my grit estimate when I say this stone can do up to 30,000 grit. And that's as fine as anything on the market. There's some man-made sharpening stones that you can spend $275 on, and eventually they wear out, and also they dish every sharpening session. Whereas a piece of jasper like this can cover the whole grit spectrum with just a few surface lapping techniques. You can also dress it with a slurry stone, which would just be any other fine medium. You could use another piece of jasper if you want to make the surface really smooth and slick and higher grit. Or you could use something gritty or even sandpaper, and that'll take this stone into the bevel setting range. So what I usually do is I lap the back side of the stone like that, and I keep this top side either unlapped or slurried with a diamond plate. Alrighty, let's see what we got. Okay, so it's starting to shave at the toe. That was the problem area before. It's still a little bit tugging in here, so I'm gonna make one more slurry. And I wash everything again, just to make sure I don't drop loose particles into the slurry. And this time I'm going to make just a little more slurry than I made last time, because my edge isn't quite back yet. And when you do this, you don't want to push too hard, and you want to be careful that you don't dig the corner of your diamond plate into the stone, because you don't want to make chunks. You want to make a very fine abrasive compound. I try not to go off of the side of the stone, because that throws the slurry off the surface. I just try to do a little press like that, and that's how I keep my abrasive from going away. Now if you listen, you can hear that sound. It's quite a fast cutting action, and within just a short period of time, this slurry will darken up. I really like having a full-size bench stone for sharpening razors, because I can hold a nice size slurry on the surface. If you're sharpening a razor with one of my barber size stones, or even a 4x1, you may just want to keep a lapping plate handy so that you can make the stone a little bit faster, because it's not going to be able to hold slurry very easily. On the barber hone size, that'll be able to hold a decent little slurry. But on a 4x1 stone, you're best off just dressing it and not worrying about trying to keep the slurry. Because as soon as you lap the surface with like 200 grit or 400 grit sandpaper or diamond plate, that opens the pores of the stone. They become programmed to act like the grit that they've been freshly lapped at. And this only takes off like a millionth of the stone every time you do it. So you're not going to wear out your sharpening stone by dressing or conditioning it in various ways. These will last a lifetime. I spent over $2,000 on Naniwa and Chosera sharpening stones. I tried the Suhiro ones, and I found that I can get all of the results that that huge bundle of sharpening stones got me with just one stone using some classic techniques. So that's what I do these days. Now that I'm not sharpening knives all day long for people, I don't mind just taking the time and doing the grit progression with one stone. And I find that it takes right about the same amount of time as it would take me if I did a bunch of jumps. And that's just one of the superior advantages of slurrying with a diamond plate. You get such a pure slurry. I wouldn't recommend you try to slurry like this with sandpaper, because the sandpaper will be in your slurry. But when you use a diamond plate, you get a slurry that perfectly matches your base stone. For guys that are straight razor shaving, if you finish your edge without washing the slurry off, it's going to be a little bit more gentle and mellow. Whereas if you wash the slurry away, your edge will have a little bit more bite to it, and it'll be a little bit sharper. And the reason is because if you leave some slurry, you're going to have a little bit of rounding in that final polish. It's not going to make your edge dull. It's just going to wash away or keep a little bit of that extra gemstone abrasive. A soft stone like a caudicle gives a edge similar to that effect of finishing on slurry, whereas if you wash the slurry away, you'll get a finish that's going to resemble more of like a really high-end synthetic grit stone, or some of the more expensive, harder, finer Japanese finishers. Jasper is actually quite a bit harder though than Japanese stones. They are a sedimentary rock, and this is a metamorphic stone. This stone has been recrystallized, and it's made up of mostly pure silicate quartz and a small concentration of garnet abrasive, and there's some aluminum oxide in garnet as well, I believe, or in the quartz matrix. So it can handle really high carbide steels like CPM 3V. I personally haven't tried crucible steel, but I would imagine that this would make a good polishing stone for it. You would just need something a little coarse to get started. But this stuff can handle 65 HRC steel, no problem. I've sharpened heart steel on these stones and it goes really quick. All right, let's see where we're at. All right, so as you can see, the whole edge is back. It's shaving along the whole edge. And let's see, we're at about the 16-minute mark. So that was a bevel reset using slurry. This razor was shaving before, so it didn't take as long as if you had a totally dull razor. If you were doing a totally dull blade, you'd probably want to just lap this stone with a rougher grit and do the bevel set that way, with or without slurry. That's the way to get your bevel set first, is use a coarser medium to dress the Jasper. So, pretty simple. Just keep your strokes even, keep your hand light, and that's how you do a one-stone hone. Thanks for watching, guys. This is Gabriel with Wild Whetstones, and if you'd like to see where you can get one of these Jasper stones, check out naturalwhetstonesharpening.com or visit the Facebook group Wild Whetstones. Thanks for watching, and let me know down below if you guys have a request for the next sharpening video that I make. And here's a closer look at the polish that I was able to achieve on this razor. Naked eye, I can see my reflection in it just a little bit. It's got a very nice hazy mirror kind of a finish. And for those of you that made it all the way to the end of this video, here's a little bonus content for you. If you have another piece of Jasper, this one is a translucent block from a different stone, but the hardness is identical. What you can do is you can rub stone on stone as another way to eke out the finest bit of performance for doing the last stage of polishing on your edge. So I just keep it near the sink so I can keep some good lubrication going. And that really puts a glossy, smooth finish on this sharpening stone. The longer you do this, the better. You're not gonna get a slurry even if you don't wash things away, because these stones are just too hard to draw up grit from each other on that kind of level that's gonna be visible. But on a microscopic level, this dresses the stone and cleans it really fine. And if you do this long enough, you'll be able to see a reflection on the surface of the stone, even when it's dry. So after I dress it, give it a rinse. Clean my hands a little bit too, so they don't transfer any grit. And I'll come back and I'll just make a few more of those really light polishing strokes.